Welcome back. It's Tuesday, and that means that Nicky Bandini and Mina Rzouki join us to discuss the latest transfer stories from Serie A. Good afternoon to both of you. Great to have you back. We're going to start, guess what? Dusan Vlahovic, all right? He seems to be wanted by all the top clubs around Europe. Latest newspaper stories this morning linking him with Arsenal. How difficult would it be to get that deal done, and how much would it cost?
Well, there's a lot being said right now about Dusan Vlahovic because a lot of clubs are interested in him, and he is a player who thinks a lot about his future. He cares about where he's going to move because he's looking at the trajectory. He wants to play in the Champions League. He wants to be guaranteed of contributing to trophies, and he cares a lot about who's coaching him. So I think that, for example, that's one of the reasons why he decided to stay over the summer in Fiorentina, because he liked Vincenzo Italiano and the tactics that were being deployed there, and he thought, I could really contribute to this. So we know that Arsenal are interested. I don't think he is very keen to move there. There is a part of Fiorentina that, according to reports in Italy, that they wouldn't mind so much moving him on for around 55 million euros, plus Lucas Torreira, who they already have on loan over there. So there is a potential of that, but they ideally would like 70 to 80 million. But obviously his contract runs out next summer, July 2023. So they know that it's going to be difficult, but there are lots of teams interested. And I think ideally for him, he'd like to move somewhere like a Manchester City, potentially Juventus, somewhere that he feels that he can be guaranteed more prestigious trophies. And he's not entirely sure, I think, that he can get that at Arsenal.
I think that's a really interesting part of it. I think with Vlahovic, there's the club side of it, which is what Fiorentina are willing to do. And of course, they've got a player who's out of contract, not this summer, but the summer after in 2024. And so they've got to, 2023. Yeah. And so they've got to consider their financial side of it. But I think, as Mina said, Vlahovic is a really singular, very single-minded individual who seems very, very focused on each step forward in his career. He's planned his career, and I think he's going to want that next club to be somewhere that he will be for at least a couple of years and make that next step forward, play in the Champions League. And Arsenal, they're working towards the Champions League, but they're not there right now, and I think that's something definitely that will be on his mind.
It could be a problem, I suppose, with that contract expiring. If Fiorentina want to get as much money as they can, the further it goes down, unfortunately, his value goes down no matter how many goals he scores. But just remind any viewers who weren't watching last week what type of a striker he is.
Yeah, he's a classic number 9. He looks the part. He's tall, he's strong. He's very much someone who imposes himself on centre-backs. I think that's something that could stand him in very good stead in the Premier League, that way of playing. But he's also really come on as a finisher, I think, in the last couple of seasons. And Mina talked about Vincenzo Italiano and the coaching he's done there. And I think that aspect is something they've worked on together quite a lot. But I think he's again, tall, physical number 9, good finisher, very strong in the air, very aggressive in how he sort of handles himself around defenders, imposes himself, sets the line, and really leads the line for a team.
Also, I think it's really important to note with him that when you're buying Vlahovic, you're not buying just a regular striker. You're buying a player who is the first to show up at training, who is so keen to improve every day. He works so hard, which is why he cares a lot about who his coaches are. Prandelli is someone who took Italy to the Euro 2012 final, and he's somebody who really helped promote Vlahovic and progress him as a player, and he really owes him a lot, and now he loves Italiano. He's very much about learning new things off the ball, on the ball. How can I improve? How much can I give in terms of on a mental capacity? You know, I want to have the right attitude going forward. And I feel that when you are a club that's looking for a young striker, you want somebody that's desperate to make it.
Yeah, I think you might have just added 10 million pounds onto his deal, actually. So if Fiorentina will be happy with you. Juventus not so happy, though, with Federico Chiesa. Not with him, sorry, but the fact that he's out for the season, really bad news for them. Worse news for him, of course. But does that mean that Juventus may look to the Premier League to replace him?
It's a terrible thing because, I mean, they've lost Ronaldo, which is basically like all their goals. And then they thought, okay, well, we could get a few from Chiesa because we're going to build our team around Chiesa. They lost him in November. Then he decided to really train hard over the Christmas period, didn't take a holiday, and thought, this is going to be my time. I'm going to be the man for Juventus. I'm going to score the goals for them, the goals that are not coming from Morata or Dybala. And then, of course, he gets this the season-ending injury, which is terrible for Juve and for the Italian national team. But they don't have money. They've had a cash injection from their shareholders, but that's kind of money that is going to be used to sort of paper over the cracks that they've really suffered because of the pandemic. So right now, when we're looking at players, they wouldn't mind a winger or a classic number 9. Ideally, they'd love a Vlahovic, but I'm not sure that they have the kind of money for that deal. So they're trying to look for something that is short-term. There's been names mentioned like Anthony Martial and possibly Mauro Icardi from PSG. But I don't think they're looking for any of that profile. I think right now they're looking for much smaller profiles just to get them through the 6 months.
Yeah, and I think you've told the gentle version of that story for Juventus. You could also say that Juventus took a gamble this summer. They said, we're going to say goodbye to Ronaldo, who guarantees us basically a goal a game on average, and we're going to trust Chiesa and Dybala between them to pick up that slack. And actually, Chiesa, after a great Euros, didn't have the brightest start to the season already, but now you lose him for the whole season, and you do need someone else to come in and help that collective up front. There are names in the Premier League that have been mentioned. Anthony Martial was something that I think Juventus explored, but I don't think that's the way they're leaning at the moment. I think a really interesting one could be Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang at Arsenal. I don't think that's necessarily an advanced conversation right now, but I think that's really in the category of doable deals. Someone who at Arsenal is no longer sort of part of the project, isn't part of Arteta's plans, could perhaps be a sort of mutually beneficial, even loan deal, just to let Juventus pick up his wages until the end of the season, and who can score goals. You know, we know he can score goals, and so I think that's something that, especially after the Supercoppa, which is coming up in Italy on Wednesday, Juventus are playing Inter in that. I think you're going to see the Juventus directors really exploring some of these options, and that's one which I would just keep an eye on, maybe.
Well, they are looking to sell Ramsey. I wonder whether they can send him back to Arsenal.
Yeah, well, they've both got big wages as well, haven't they? Which is often a stumbling block. Tottenham look to be, available and open to offers for some of their players. Are any of those players wanted in Serie A?
Well, ideally they were looking at Japhet Tanganga and they were looking at Ndombele. But unfortunately, we know Daniel Levy, and he likes to get he puts quite a price tag on his players. And we know that Italian clubs are more like looking for loan deals with no obligations to buy. Potentially, if he's very good, then they will invest a certain level of money. But I think Tanganga and Ndombele are too expensive. Ndombele, because of his wages, I think on the ball he's a superb player, and he's somebody whose profile I think is exceedingly interesting for teams like Milan and Juventus. That is somebody they would be looking at, even though I know that he has suffered a lot of disappointment, and I'm not entirely sure Antonio Conte seems too pleased with him. But in Tanganga as well, we're looking at 25 million. And that's just, those types of figures are almost impossible to reach in Serie A right now for the clubs. Even Juventus, who once upon a time used to splash the cash on the likes of obviously Ronaldo and Matthias de Ligt. So I'm not sure. There was obviously talks of Kulusevski, and there could have been a trade deal there. But Kulusevski, considering Chiesa's now suffered an injury, they're looking to keep him on now.
Yeah, I think I was going to say it's almost the opposite way around. Tottenham had their eyes on one Juventus player, and that could have unlocked some other deals. There could have been a part exchange to do. But Kulusevski is in a very similar role to Chiesa. He's another wide attacking forward, and I think Juventus now really can't afford to let go of someone in that position unless they know they've got someone coming in to pick up that slack that's already going to be created by Chiesa's absence.
But what about AC Milan? Because there was a story in the newspaper this morning that we brought to you on Good Morning Transfers about maybe them being interested in Nathan Ake on loan from Manchester City.
Yeah, it's another injury-different conversation really for Juventus. They've lost Simon Kjaer for the rest of the season, and they do need more help at centre-back. We've seen in the last couple of games Gabbia and Kalulu, this really young, inexperienced defensive partnership that actually has worked out okay. But even if those players do form a good partnership, you still need another option now because you've lost someone who was one of your starters. Certainly Nathan Ake is interesting to Milan, and unfortunately, same as Mina's just been saying with Juventus, I think you're going to hear this conversation probably every time we come on and talk about Serie A clubs.
They're broke.
No one's got a big sack of money that they're looking to throw around this January, and I think what Milan would love to do is get a loan with an option to buy rather than obligation to buy. And if City were interested in that, I think that Ake is very much under consideration at Milan, someone who they would love to have, but they're not willing to put the money up front on anyone right now, and that's going to be probably the big sticking point, I think, from City's stand.
I mean, Tomori was such a great deal for them,
Yeah.
and the way that he's developed. I mean, he's basically their leader right now. They don't know what to do without him, and luckily he's tested negative now for COVID, so he can be back. But they're sort of hoping that if they bring in another player like that, they could train him and ensure that he could be somebody that Tomori is. Unfortunately, that's not the way for all other English defenders right now.
This time last week we talked about Ainsley Maitland-Niles making
Yeah.
his way over to Italy. He's made his debut. How did he do?
Yeah. It was a mixed bag, I would say. There was some good in there, but there was definitely some bad.
It depends on who you were listening to, English commentating or Italian commentating, because they
Very
were
true.
vastly different
Okay.
in how they rated the player.
Yeah, there was some very different analysis in the Italian coverage of that game, I would say.
And we trust yours more than anyone else. What did you two think?
I thought he had some good moments. I think he certainly was sort of, for someone who'd been there for 2 days, bear in mind he'd come off the plane 2 days before, went straight into the team. I think he offered some thrust going forward. But I think, for instance, the first goal right away, it's Federico Chiesa, very good player. Lots of opponents struggle with him, but got Maitland-Niles onto his back foot, created the space he needed to then send the ball for Dybala to score. So he was at fault on some of the goals. And Roma had this spectacular collapse, one of the most extraordinary games of football I've seen in years.
Oh, I think for the last 5-6 years, honestly.
From 3-1 up to lose 4-3, and Maitland-Niles was certainly not free from blame in that, along with many other teammates.
Well, according to, for example, Tuttosport, he was rated as the lowest player in Roma. Gazzetta dello Sport argued that he lost more balls than any player there. But firstly, this is a baptism of fire. We're asking you to play in the Stadio Olimpico for Roma against Juventus, one of the most heated matches that there could ever be. I mean, considering there's been so many cruciate ligament injuries in these matches, it tells you just how far these teams go to try to defeat each other. But we're talking about 7 minutes and Roma conceded 3. You're never going to get a high rating, and I think for him it's tough. It's an emotional game. But I definitely think that for the first 60 minutes or so, he delivered. But Jose Mourinho demands constant, high levels of mentality, and it's just hard to do when it's your first match at the Olimpico.
Oh, let's hope that all improves for him and Jose Mourinho as well. Mina, Nicky, same time next week?
Sounds good.
Excellent. Right, thank you very much.